Eyes open. Look at me. Stay with me.
Your mother left something at this church. I'll know when you're ready.
Stay with me. The priest's voice cut through the dark. Not gentle, urgent. Eyes open. Look at me. Stay with me. Father Doyle had been a priest for 37 years. He'd opened this door for drunks, runaways, women with split lips and careful stories. He thought he'd seen every configuration of human suffering that could land on church steps at 11 p.m. He had not seen this. The woman was black, mid-30s, her face the particular gray of someone whose body had started shutting down non-essential functions. She'd collapsed against the door. Not fallen, collapsed, the way people do when they've been holding themselves up through sheer refusal, and the refusal finally ran out. She had 3 newborns tucked inside her coat. 3. Father Doyle's hands moved before his mind caught up, checking airways, checking pulses, the training from 30 years ago surfacing through shock. The first baby. The second. The third. The third one wasn't moving. Thomas. His voice cracked across the silent nave to the night janitor somewhere in the back. Call 911. Every blanket we have. Now. He pressed 2 fingers to the third infant's neck. Found a pulse. Thread thin. But there. Stay with me, he said again. And this time he wasn't sure if he was talking to the woman or the baby. Her lips were blue. Her eyes kept sliding sideways, away from him, toward somewhere else. He wrapped his wool coat around all 4 of them and lifted. Light, terrifyingly light, the way people get when their body has eaten through its reserves, and carried them inside where the heat hit like a wall. The babies started crying. Weak sounds, kitten sounds. But crying meant breathing, and breathing meant time. What's your name? Her mouth moved. No sound. Your name. His voice was sharp, deliberate, keeping her present. Tell me your name. Her lips moved again. Mariana. Mariana. He held her gaze. The ambulance is coming. Your babies are alive. All 3. Do you hear me? They're alive. One tear slid down her frozen cheek. Father Doyle had seen suffering in every shape. But something about this woman, about the way she'd wrapped those infants inside her own body against the cold, the way she'd chosen to spend her last warmth on 3 lives that weren't even her size yet, made his hands shake as he checked their tiny faces for frostbite. How far did you walk? Her lips barely moved. 6 blocks. 6 blocks. In the worst blizzard in 3 years. With 3 newborns against her chest. You're a miracle, he whispered. Her eyes found his. And in them he saw something he recognized from 37 years of this work. Desperation that had burned so long it had transformed into something harder. Something that didn't look like hope, but functioned like it. As the paramedics loaded Mariana onto the stretcher, Father Doyle noticed 2 things. The first, her coat pockets. Empty except for 3 envelopes. Heavy, cream-colored paper. Already opened. He couldn't read the letterhead from where he stood, but something made him memorize the shape of it anyway. Some instinct that had kept him useful for 4 decades. The second, her hands. Even wrapped in warming blankets, her hands stayed cold. He leaned close as the paramedics wheeled her toward the doors. Your mother left something at this church, he said quietly. 23 years ago. She said to give it to her daughter when the time was right. He paused. I'll know when. Mariana's eyes went wide. But the doors were already closing. You stayed through that. Most people clicked away 30 seconds in. Subscribe, because this story was built for people who don't. 6 hours earlier, the babies had gone quiet. That's when Mariana knew. Not the hunger screams that had shredded the last 6 hours, those she could endure. Not the cold that had turned their lips pale. The silence. The specific silence of small bodies conserving what little they had left. She pressed shaking fingers under Lily's nose. Felt breath. Faint, but there. Moved to hope. Then faith. All 3 still alive. Barely. The apartment was cold enough that she could see her own breath. Ice had formed on the inside of the windows. Delicate, intricate patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't evidence of her failure. The radiator had been dead for 3 days. Cut off when Derek canceled everything before he left. Phone. Heat. Bank accounts. Her. Mariana hadn't eaten in 2 days. She could feel her body consuming itself trying to make milk, the hollow ache behind her ribs, the way her vision went gray at the edges when she stood too fast, the trembling in her hands that wouldn't stop no matter how she pressed them flat against surfaces. She tried nursing an hour ago. Lily had latched and pulled and found almost nothing. The cry that came after, betrayed, desperate, had broken something in Mariana's chest that she wasn't sure would ever set right. Count to 3. Her grandmother's voice. When the world's too big, baby girl, make it small. Count to 3. 3 heartbeats. 3 babies breathing. 3 more seconds survived. Outside, snow fell so thick she couldn't see the street. The walk to St. Augustine's would be 6 blocks. Staying here meant watching them die. Mariana looked at 3 tiny faces. Lily, Derek's nose, the fighter. Even starving, she squirmed and fussed, demanding the world pay attention. Hope, her grandmother's cheekbones, the observer. Watching Mariana's face with an intensity that seemed impossible for a newborn. Taking everything in. Faith, eyes still deciding their color, the peacemaker. She calmed only when her sisters were close enough that their heartbeats touched hers. Derek had called them the mistake. His last words before he left, "You'll figure it out. Woman like you always do." He'd taken the car keys. Canceled her phone while standing in their kitchen. Calm, efficient, the way he handled inconvenient business. Transferred the last $800 from their joint account. Then he'd check the mailbox one more time before walking out. Mariana had noticed that. Filed it somewhere cold and quiet inside her. Kept counting. She forced herself to stand. Wrapped the babies in every blanket she owned. Fashioned a sling from scarves and tucked all 3 against her chest. Their weight familiar and terrifying. The door opened onto a wall of white. Snow to her knees. Wind that found every gap in every layer. She stepped into it. 1 step. Then another. Then another. 1, 2, 3. At block 3, her legs gave out. She sat down in the snow. When she stood again, she couldn't remember which direction she'd been walking. The snow had erased everything. No footprints, no landmarks, just white in every direction. For 10 seconds, or maybe a minute, time had stopped working. She stood paralyzed. Then Lily whimpered. The fighter, refusing silence. The church was north. North was forward. Forward was the only direction that existed. She moved. She fell at block 5. Got up. Fell at block 6 and wasn't sure she could rise. That's when she saw the steps. She crawled the last 10 feet. Made it to the door. Her hand lifted. Knocked. She couldn't hear if it made sound. The door opened, and Mariana let herself break. 3 days later, the hospital kept all 4 of them. Mariana's room had 2 beds. One for her, one wide enough for 3 bassinets arranged like small soldiers. The nurses had done that without being asked. Mariana noticed things like that now. Small kindnesses that cost nothing and meant everything. Lily, Hope, Faith, all breathing, all fed, all warm. Mariana couldn't stop staring at them. Dr. Reeves had been direct that morning. The kind of doctor who believed patients deserved the unvarnished version. Severely malnourished. Another 48 hours, and we'd be having a very different conversation. She'd said it without flinching, which Mariana had respected. The babies were underweight, but stable. Lily had already gained 4 ounces. Of course she had. The fighter. Hope was being watched for a heart murmur that the doctors called minor and Mariana called terrifying. Faith slept through everything. Peaceful in a way that made Mariana's throat tighten. You had to have survived something to sleep like that. Father Doyle visited that afternoon. He brought lemon drops, kept them loose in his coat pocket, offered one to Mariana with a smile that had seemed too much to be naive, but chose warmth anyway. Sugar helps with shock, he said. Mariana took one. Let the sour-sweet dissolve on her tongue. She studied him while he settled into the chair beside her bed. 60s, broad hands. The kind of face that had absorbed decades of other people's worst moments and come out the other side with something that wasn't quite peace, but functioned like it. You said something, she said. In the ambulance. About my mother. I did. What did she leave? A letter. He folded his hands in his lap. Sealed. With very specific instructions about timing. What timing? She said I'd know when you were ready. His eyes moved to the 3 bassinets, then back to her. You're not ready yet, but you're getting there. Mariana wanted to argue. Something in his certainty stopped her. She died when I was 15, she said instead. I know. She came to me when she was pregnant with you. Scared. Alone. Her family had cut her off completely. He paused. I helped her find resources. We stayed in touch over the years. Before she passed, she brought me the letter. Why didn't you find me sooner? I tried. Twice. You'd moved. Changed your name when you married. He said it without accusation. Just fact. And she was very specific about the timing. Mariana pressed her cold hands flat against the hospital blanket. You mentioned the mail. At the church. Before the ambulance came. Father Doyle nodded, unsurprised that she'd held on to that detail through hypothermia and shock. 37 years in ministry. You learn to recognize patterns. Young mother, clearly educated, abandoned with newborns. He reached into his coat pocket and set a key on the blanket beside her hand. Building manager is a parishioner. Your mailbox has been full for weeks. Mariana stared at the key. Even if there's something there, it won't be much. My mother died working 3 jobs. Check anyway, Father Doyle said. Hope costs nothing. She needed to understand Derek before she could explain what he'd done to her. And to understand Derek, you had to understand the woman who'd built him. 11 years ago, Mariana had been 19 and working as a legal assistant at Crawford & Pierce, a firm that treated its black support staff as furniture, present, functional, invisible unless needed. The day she met Derek, a senior partner had handed her his trash without looking at her face. Just another black girl in the office. She'd stood there paralyzed between humiliation and professionalism. Derek had appeared from somewhere to her left. Mariana Reyes? He'd looked her in the eye. Actually seen her. I'm Derek Shaw. I've heard you're the only person in this building who actually understands complex contracts. That moment, being seen by a man in a world that made her invisible, had cracked something open in her, made her vulnerable to everything that came after. They married when she was 21. By 23, she'd become his unpaid everything. Bookkeeper, office manager, the quiet architecture behind every award he accepted. His mother Victoria had welcomed her with the particular warmth of a woman who decided she was exotic enough to be interesting and grateful enough to be manageable. So lucky, Victoria used to say, the word doing heavy lifting. Mariana is so lucky to have found Derek. Her mother Elena had been different. Elena Reyes, born Elena Ashford, the biracial daughter of a wealthy white man and his black wife. When Elena chose Marcus Reyes, a black jazz musician with more talent than income, her father William had responded with the cold fury of a man who'd built his identity on a certain kind of order. He cut her off. Erased her from documents, burned photographs, pretended she'd never existed. Elena had worked herself to death rather than beg him to stop. 3 jobs, no health insurance, worn down to nothing. She died when Mariana was 15, whispering with her last breath, never let a man control your money, baby girl. Especially not one who thinks you're lucky to have him. Mariana had tried to remember that. Derek had been so good at making her forget. 3 years ago, she'd stopped forgetting. It happened at 3 a.m., reconciling accounts the way she always did when Derek's paperwork didn't add up. The numbers that night refused to resolve. She'd checked them 4 times before she understood what she was looking at. Derek had mortgaged their house 3 times, buried the business under debt, lost $75,000 gambling, burned through $180,000 in cryptocurrency that no longer existed. Total debt, $2.3 million. Total assets, $1.6 million. Underwater by $700,000. Mariana had sat in that dark office and made a choice. Not the choice Derek would have expected. Confrontation, tears, the kind of scene he could manage and reframe. She'd opened a new document instead. Started typing. Every mortgage. Every debt. Every transfer she could trace. Browser histories when he forgot to clear them. Account statements. Dates. She'd placed her retirement account, $180,000, and her grandmother's inheritance, $340,000, into an irrevocable trust designated for her future children. Assets Derek couldn't touch because he didn't know they existed. Then she'd kept documenting. And she'd waited. Men like Derek always left when things became inconvenient. She just had to survive long enough to be standing when he did. She hadn't known she'd be standing in a blizzard. But she'd been standing. That evening, a social worker named Denise drove Mariana to the apartment building. The mailbox was crammed. Junk, past due notices, collection threats. Then 3 cream envelopes. Heavy stock. Expensive. Morrison, Whitaker and Associates. Trusts and Estates Division. 545 Madison Avenue. Mariana's hands shook as she opened the first one. Dear Ms. Mariana Catherine Reyes, we are writing to inform you that you have been named sole beneficiary in the estate of William James Ashford, deceased November 3rd. Estate value, $1.2 billion. The letters slipped from her fingers. Denise caught them. Read the number. Went white. Mariana's vision tunneled. She pressed her back against the cold brick wall. Counted. 1, 2, 3. Not to survive. To believe it. $1.2 billion. The number that would have saved them had been sitting in her mailbox while her daughters froze. If you're still watching, you already know this story is different. It's going to get darker before it gets light. Subscribe now, while you're in it, before the next revelation hits. You'll want to be here for what's coming. The second letter was dated 2 weeks after the first. More urgent. The third, 1 week ago. Final notice. Mariana sank onto the building's front steps in the March cold. William James Ashford. Her grandfather. The man who'd chosen his pride over his daughter. Who'd let Elena work herself to death rather than admit he'd been wrong. Who'd built his entire identity on a version of the world that required erasing his own biracial child's blackness to maintain. And now, consumed by deathbed guilt, he'd left everything to the granddaughter he'd never met. The black granddaughter his racism had tried to erase. Denise was already dialing. 3 minutes of hold music. Then a woman's voice, sharp, relieved. Ms. Reyes? Thank God. We've been trying to reach you for 6 weeks. Mariana's voice came out distant. I almost died 6 weeks ago. With my 3 daughters. Silence. Where are you right now? Outside my apartment. The one with no heat. I'm sending a car. A pause. Whatever you've been through, it's over now. Mariana looked at the 3 letters. At the building where Derek slept upstairs with his girlfriend, probably congratulating himself on how cleanly he'd escaped the inconvenient black wife and her mixed babies. At the grandfather who'd left her a fortune out of guilt, but couldn't pick up a phone while he was still breathing. At the babies who'd survived because their mother counted to 3. It's not over, Mariana said quietly. It's just beginning. And this time, she'd be the one doing the math. The car that arrived was black. Expensive. A driver in a suit who helped Mariana into the back seat with the practiced efficiency of someone paid to treat everyone like they belonged there. She'd left the babies with Denise and a nurse the firm had dispatched. 3 strangers watching her daughters while Mariana rode through the city in a car that cost more than her apartment. The city looked different through tinted windows. Smaller. More manageable. Mariana pressed her cold hands against the leather seat and watched the buildings pass. Catherine Morrison's office occupied the 42nd floor. The woman herself was 50-something. Sharp silver hair in a precise bob. A suit the color of slate. Eyes that had absorbed too much and chosen clarity over bitterness. She offered Mariana a lemon drop from a glass bowl on her desk before she said a single word about the estate. Sugar helps with shock, Catherine said. Mariana took one. Looked at her. Father Doyle says the same thing. Smart man. Catherine sat beside Mariana, not behind the desk, not across from her. Equal level. Mariana noticed that too. Tell me what happened, Catherine said. All of it. So Mariana did. She told her about Derek. About Victoria. About the apartment with ice on the inside of the windows. About the decision to stand up and walk 6 blocks because staying meant watching 3 people die. About the radiator cut off during the worst storm in 3 years. Catherine listened without interrupting. Her jaw got tighter with every detail. Her hands folded in her lap and stayed there, knuckles whitening. When Mariana finished, Catherine was quiet. Then, my sister died in a situation like yours. 15 years ago. Her husband drained her accounts. isolated her from everyone who might help. She died without the resources to leave. Her voice stayed level. Her eyes didn't. I became a trusts and estates lawyer so women could protect assets from men like him. Your case isn't just business, Mariana. She stood, walked to her desk, returned with a thick folder. Your grandfather's estate. I'm going to walk you through it. Then we're going to talk about your husband. Ex-husband, Mariana thought. But the papers weren't filed yet. Legally, she was still Mrs. Derek Shaw. The thought sat in her stomach like cold metal. Catherine opened the folder. William Ashford died 3 months ago. Massive stroke. He'd been in declining health for 2 years, long enough to start asking questions about Elena. How she died, where you were, what his choices had cost her. She slid a document across. His diagnosis changed something in him. He began requesting information about Elena's life after he cut her off. What she'd worked, what she'd earned, how she died. He never contacted me, Mariana said. No, he was too ashamed. He'd built his entire identity on being right. Admitting he'd been wrong about Elena, that rejecting her for the life she chose, for fully embracing who she was, had destroyed her, would have meant admitting he'd killed his own daughter. The room went quiet. He did kill her, Mariana said. She worked herself to death because he cut her off. 3 jobs. No health insurance. I was 15. He knew that. His lawyer told me William spent his last weeks saying her name. Elena. Elena. I killed my daughter. He kept asking, did Elena's child survive? Is she suffering the way her mother did? Mariana stared at the medical records. At proof her grandfather had died saying her mother's name. Too late. 17 years too late. He didn't leave you money out of love, Catherine said. He left it out of terror. Terror that you'd die the same way Elena did. She slid the will across. Sole heir. Complete assets. No conditions. Liquid assets of $400 million. Real estate holdings worth $600 million. Corporate investments totaling $200 million. Catherine paused. Total estate value, $1.2 billion. After taxes, you'll clear approximately $900 million. Mariana looked at her hands, pressed flat against the armrest. Still cold. Derek doesn't know, she said. Not from us. We've been attempting to reach you for 6 weeks. Every letter sent to your marital address. Catherine's voice shifted. Did you receive them? No. Did Derek collect the mail? Mariana thought about him checking the mailbox before he left. The careful, deliberate way he'd done it. Like confirming something. Every day, she said. Starting in January. Catherine's expression went sharp. He intercepted them. I think so. You think so, or you know so? Mariana reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, opened a cloud account Derek didn't know existed. 3 years of spreadsheets, bank statements, mortgage documents, scanned records, browser histories from the nights he'd forgotten to clear them. She turned the screen toward Catherine. Catherine stared. Her pen stopped moving. You've been documenting for 3 years? Yes. And you didn't confront him? No. I waited. Catherine looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across her face. Recognition, recalibration, the specific expression of someone realizing the person across from them is operating at a different level than expected. Then she laughed. Surprised. Genuine. Mariana Reyes. She shook her head. You terrifying, brilliant woman. She started writing. We keep the inheritance completely quiet. We file requesting minimal settlement, small enough that he thinks you're desperate. And while he's congratulating himself on escaping cleanly, she slid a document across. We attach a complete disclosure of marital assets and debts. Mariana saw the trap open like a door. He'll sign it thinking he's getting the house and business, she said slowly. And he'll assume every debt attached to those assets. The negative $700,000. The mortgages. The credit cards. Every dollar he gambled away. Catherine's smile was not a warm thing. How soon can we move? We need you somewhere safe first. Somewhere he can't access. Mariana looked at the city below. At the future spreading out like a battlefield where she suddenly held every weapon. Right now, she said. By midnight, Mariana and the triplets were in a 2-bedroom apartment with a doorman who'd worked for Catherine's firm for a decade. Warm. Stocked refrigerator. 3 cribs with soft blankets and mobiles that turned slowly in the heated air. Mariana fed the babies, changed them, laid them down. Lily fussed until positioned closest to the window. Always the fighter, always needing to see what was coming. Hope watched Mariana's face with those ancient eyes, studying, memorizing. Faith fell asleep first, but only when her sisters were close enough to touch. Mariana stood at the window. Somewhere across the city, Derek was sleeping next to his girlfriend, probably telling himself the hard part was over. That the black wife and her mixed babies were someone else's problem now. He had no idea she'd found the letters. No idea about the $1.2 billion. No idea the woman he'd left to freeze was already building the trap he'd walk into smiling. Mariana pressed her hands against the cold glass. Inside, something was burning. She pulled out her phone, opened Instagram. Vanessa's latest post, standing in Mariana's kitchen, wearing Mariana's grandmother's apron, the one that had belonged to Elena, worn for 60 years, kept through 3 jobs and no health insurance, and a daughter left motherless at 15. Caption: New beginnings with my forever person. A heart emoji. Mariana stared at that apron. Save the photo. Evidence. Ammunition. Reminder of exactly what had been taken and exactly what was owed. Then she turned toward the 3 cribs. Sleep well? Girls, she whispered. Tomorrow, Mama's going to war. Catherine's investigative team worked fast. 48 hours after Mariana moved into the firm's apartment, a woman named Rose, mid-40s, the specific economy of movement that came from years of finding things people hid, sat across from Mariana with a laptop and an expression that had stopped being surprised by human behavior a long time ago. We pulled his email architecture first, Rose said. Standard procedure when there's suspected correspondence interception. She turned the laptop screen toward Mariana. He didn't just intercept 3 letters. He built a system. The screen showed a technical diagram, email filters, redirect rules, a hidden folder buried for levels deep in their shared account. He created filters on December 28th. Anything containing the words inheritance, estate, Ashford, Morrison, trust fund, beneficiary, redirected automatically to a password-protected folder he'd named archive. Mariana stared at the screen. December 28th, 6 days before the triplets were born. What was the password? She asked. Rosa's expression didn't change. Upgrade. The words sat in the air between them. Mariana pressed her hands flat against the table. Cold. Always cold. She counted silently. 1, 2, 3, and kept her face still. Upgrade. His private joke about leaving. About trading the black wife and her inconvenient pregnancy for something cleaner. Something that required less of him. How many emails did he intercept? 14. Spanning 6 weeks. The last one arrived February 9th. Rose paused. The day before he left. February 9th. He'd read the final notice. Confirmed the inheritance was real. Confirmed the amount. Then gone to bed next to Mariana. 8 months pregnant. Already exhausted. Already running on what she didn't know were her last reserves. And planned his exit for the following morning. Mariana thought about that night. She'd woken at 2 a.m. with her back aching. Derek had been asleep, or appeared to be. She'd lain there in the dark, counting ceiling tiles until her back eased. He'd been lying 6 inches away, already gone. There's more, Rose said. She pulled up a browser history, dates in a clean column down the left side of the screen. This is from his personal laptop. We accessed it through the home network's backup system. He'd enabled automatic cloud backup and never disabled it. She highlighted the first entry. November 18th. Estate law marital property New York/inheritance during marriage rights spouse. November 18th, Mariana said. That's when he found the first inquiry. Yes. Keep reading. January 8th. Wrongful death settlement spouse/life insurance beneficiary laws/simultaneous death clause. Mariana's breath caught. She didn't let it show. January 15th. How long does hypothermia take/infant mortality cold exposure/SID statistics winter? The room went very quiet. February 9th. How to cancel utilities remotely/weather forecast February 10th to 14th. February 10th. Blizzard conditions city/temperature overnight low. Rose closed the laptop with a soft click. He researched the weather, Mariana said. Her voice came out level, distant, like it belonged to someone standing slightly behind her. Yes. He waited for the storm. The forecast showed the worst conditions of the year hitting February 10th through 14th. He left February 10th at 9 a.m., canceled utilities remotely at 11 a.m., 2 hours after he walked out. 2 hours. He'd given himself 2 hours of distance before cutting the heat. Enough time to be unreachable. Not enough to establish he hadn't known what he was doing. Mariana looked at her hands on the table. 3 babies. 3 biracial daughters he'd decided were more valuable as potential wrongful death settlements than as children he might have to support. 3 lives he'd calculated against the inconvenience of divorce. He'd done the math. Just different math than hers. Can we use all of this? She asked. Every keystroke. Mariana nodded once. Stood. Walked to the window. Outside, March had started its slow, reluctant thaw. The city looked like it was trying to remember warmth. Patches of gray snow at curb edges. A pale sun doing what it could. She'd wondered, lying in that apartment in the dark 3 weeks ago, whether Derek was right about her. Whether women like her, black women who married men like him, who managed their households and their egos and their finances and called it partnership, whether women like her survived things like this. She had her answer. But survival wasn't the question anymore. That evening, Victoria called. Mariana was nursing Faith. The peacemaker had started taking longer feeds, a full 20 minutes on each side, as if making up for lost time, when her phone lit up with a number she recognized. She let it ring. Victoria called again at 9 p.m., then 9:15. The third time, Mariana answered. Victoria. Mariana. A pause. The expensive perfume somehow audible in the silence. That was always how Victoria operated, her presence arriving before her words. We need to talk. About what? About Derek. About what he's done. Another pause, briefer. About what I've found. Mariana shifted Faith to her other arm. The baby's eyes were closed, her small hands loose against Mariana's shirt. Come to Catherine Morrison's office, Mariana said. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. That's a lawyer's office. Yes. Silence. All right, Victoria said. The line went dead. Mariana set the phone down, looked at Faith's sleeping face. Victoria had packed Mariana's belongings in garbage bags, had made 11 years of pointed comments about exotic looks and lucky circumstances, had treated Elena's apron, 60 years of her mother's life worn into the fabric, as surplus to be redistributed to the woman who'd replaced her daughter-in-law. Victoria didn't do anything without calculation. She was calling now because she'd found something and decided that handing it over served her better than holding it. The question was what? And why now? Mariana pressed her cold hand gently against Faith's warm back, felt the small heartbeat against her palm. She thought about the call, about Victoria's voice, which she'd spent 11 years learning to read the way you learned to read weather. There'd been something underneath the careful control, something that didn't fit. It almost sounded like shame. The next morning, Clara, the nanny Catherine had arranged, arrived at 7. Late 20s, quiet competence, the kind of calm that babies responded to immediately. Lily had regarded her with deep suspicion for exactly 4 minutes before allowing herself to be held. Mariana used the 2 hours to sit at the kitchen table with her laptop. She opened the foundation document she'd started 3 nights ago and kept returning to in the spaces between feeds and counts. The Elena Ashford Foundation. She'd been building it in pieces. The mission statement. The service model. The intake process for women in crisis. The specific crisis she knew from the inside. Women who were counting to 3 in freezing apartments. Women whose husbands had canceled the heat. Women who didn't know yet that survival was possible, or that help existed, or that there were people who'd built systems specifically for them. She added a line she hadn't planned. We exist because one woman walked 6 blocks through a blizzard with 3 newborns and refused to let cold win. We exist because survival isn't enough. Women deserve resurrection. She stared at it. Then she opened another tab, searched for nonprofit legal requirements. Emergency provisional status. Charitable fund umbrella structures. She had money now, or would have it, once the estate cleared. Enough to build something that outlasted her rage. Something that would exist long after Derek Shaw was a footnote. Her phone buzzed. A text from Father Doyle. Foundation goes live Monday. She typed back, working on it. Can you be at the church for the first distribution? His response came in under a minute. I'll have the lemon drops ready. Mariana almost smiled. Almost. She thought about Victoria's voice on the phone. About the thing underneath the control. She pulled up the documentation she'd kept on Victoria separately. The comments, the dates, the patterns. 11 years of careful notation. There was something she'd written 3 years ago that she returned to now. November. V. Mentioned DS father. Said he never knew when to stop. First time she's referenced him as a failure rather than a loss. Something has shifted. Mariana stared at that entry. Never knew when to stop. She'd written it as a data point. Now it felt like a window into something she hadn't fully seen yet. What had Victoria built Derek to be? And what had she discovered in the building of him? That afternoon, Mariana stood in Catherine's conference room 10 minutes before Victoria arrived. The city spread below the tall windows, still gray, still half-frozen, but with something underneath it now. The suggestion of spring. The kind of light that didn't warm anything yet, but reminded you that warmth was possible. Catherine stood beside her. Whatever she's brought, Catherine said quietly. Let her give it completely before you respond. Don't fill the silence. I know how to handle Victoria. I know you do. Catherine paused. I just want to make sure she knows it too. The elevator doors opened down the hall. 3 seconds before Victoria Shaw appeared in the doorway, her perfume arrived. Heavy. Expensive. The smell of a woman who'd spent 50 years making sure she was felt before she was seen. Mariana turned. Victoria looked different. Still cream cashmere, still pearls, still the precise presentation of a woman who'd never once left the house unprepared. But her hands, folded against her purse strap, weren't quite steady. Mariana noticed. Filed it somewhere cold and quiet. And waited. Victoria settled into the chair across from Mariana and Catherine with the practiced grace of a woman who'd spent 5 decades making every room feel like her territory. She set her purse on the table, folded her hands on top of it, looked at Mariana. You look better, she said. Less. A pause, delicate as a blade, desperate. Catherine's pen stopped moving. Mrs. Shaw. Her voice was pleasant. Surgical. You have one opportunity to tell us why you're here. Make it worth the room. Victoria's lips thinned. She nodded. Derek made a mistake. Mariana said nothing. Counted silently. 1, 2, 3. He came to me in November, right after your grandfather's lawyers began searching for you. Victoria's eyes stayed on Mariana's face. He'd found an inquiry, an email to his business account asking if he knew how to contact you regarding an urgent estate matter. When exactly? Catherine asked. November 18th. Catherine wrote it down. The date Mariana already knew from the browser history. The date that had started everything. He was supposed to forward it to you. Victoria continued. Instead, he showed it to me. What did you tell him? Mariana asked. Victoria was quiet for a moment. The expensive silence she'd weaponized for decades. But this time something moved underneath it. I told him to be smart. That if your mother's family was searching for you, there was money involved. That he should position himself correctly. She paused. I didn't tell him to leave you. I didn't tell him to do it the way he did. The way he did. Mariana let that sit. You mean leaving 3 newborns in a freezing apartment during a blizzard? Victoria flinched. Minute. Almost invisible. But Mariana had spent 11 years learning the geography of this woman's face. I didn't know about that until after. He told me he'd arrange for you to stay with someone. When I came to collect your things, I believed him. So you packed my belongings in garbage bags, Mariana said. Made comments about my looks. Gave my mother's apron to his girlfriend. Yes. Victoria met her eyes. No apology in them. Just the harder thing, acknowledgement without escape. Because I believed my son. She reached into her purse, pulled out a folded piece of paper, set it on the table between them. I found this in his desk drawer 2 days ago. He doesn't know I have it. Mariana unfolded it. Handwritten. Derek's handwriting. She knew it as well as her own. Had reconciled his accounts in that handwriting for 11 years. had signed documents beside it, had watched it sign their marriage license. November 18th, first inquiry from estate lawyers. November 20th, confirm Washington estate, estimated $500 million plus. December 28th, set up email filters. January 3rd, babies born, complication, multiple heirs. January 8th, research wrongful death/life insurance beneficiary. January 15th, research hypothermia timeline/infant mortality. February 9th, final notice intercepted. Amount confirmed. February 10th, exit during storm, optimal conditions. February 10th to 14th, wait period. February 15th, check if survived. February 16th to 20th, return if deceased, grieving husband. Maintain distance if alive. March 1st, file for divorce either way. The paper shook in Mariana's hands. She made it stop. Wait period. Check if survived. Return if deceased, grieving husband. He'd written it down, structured it like a project plan. Exit strategies and contingencies and optimal conditions. The same language he used for business deals applied to the question of whether his wife and newborn daughters would survive a blizzard. Catherine took the document with careful hands, photographed it, slid it into a protective sleeve. Mrs. Shaw. Her voice had gone very quiet, the specific quiet that preceded precision. Do you understand what this is? Evidence that my son planned to let his wife and children die through calculated neglect. Victoria's voice cracked on the last word, just slightly, and positioned himself as a grieving widower entitled to her inheritance. She stood, smoothed her cashmere with hands that weren't steady. Yes, Miss Morrison, I understand exactly what it is. The room held its breath. Mariana stared at the handwriting she knew. A check if survived written in the same hand that had once left her a note on the kitchen counter. Back by 7. Pick up dinner. The ordinary handwriting of an ordinary life that had been a calculation from the beginning. Why are you giving this to us? Mariana asked. Victoria stood at the window, her back to the room. 1 second. 2. 3. Because I spent 30 years protecting a man who drank himself to death rather than face what he was. And then I spent 22 years building my son into someone who'd never be weak the same way. She paused. I made him hard. I made him strategic. I made him someone who could look at his own children and see liabilities. Her reflection in the glass was very still, and somewhere in the building of him, I forgot to make him human. She turned, picked up her purse. I don't expect forgiveness, Mariana. But those babies, my granddaughters, they deserve better than a family history built on cruelty dressed up as strength. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. You were always too good for him. I knew that from the beginning. I just couldn't afford to admit it, because admitting it would have meant admitting what we were. The door closed. The expensive perfume stayed. The room was silent. Mariana stood at the window where Victoria had stood. The city below moved, cars, people, ordinary Tuesday lives continuing. She thought about check if survived written in blue ink on cream paper. 3 babies. 3 heartbeats she'd held through 6 blocks of blizzard. 3 lives Derek had factored into a contingency, planned the way you factored weather into a travel schedule. Optimal conditions. He'd looked at a storm and seen opportunity. She pressed her hands against the glass. Cold. Always cold. Her mother had said, never let a man control your money. Her grandmother had said, when the world's too big, make it small. Count to 3. Both women had survived men who decided their lives were negotiable. Both women had counted until they couldn't. Mariana was still counting. She turned from the window. Criminal charges, she said. Mail fraud. Reckless endangerment. Catherine looked up from the document. The moment we file criminal charges, the divorce becomes complicated. Slower. More public. I know. He could fight it. Drag the babies through. I know. Mariana met her eyes. File them. Catherine studied her for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. I've been telling stories like this one for 2 years. My grandmother told my mother, never let a man control your money. My mother told me that like a warning, I spent years learning the hard way. If this story is reaching something real in you, something you've carried or witnessed or survived, subscribe. These stories exist because someone has to tell them. And you staying this long tells me you already know that. That night, Mariana sat at the kitchen table with the foundation document open on her laptop. She added a line she hadn't planned. For every woman who has ever counted to 3 just to survive the next minute. This foundation exists because counting works. And because you deserve more than survival. She stared at it. Then she opened a new tab. Searched, fastest path to emergency nonprofit provisional status New York. Catherine had said 1 week was possible. Mariana needed it in 5 days. She started typing. Behind her, in the nursery, the 3 mobiles turned slowly in the heated air. Lily's fussing subsided into sleep. Hope watched the ceiling with those ancient eyes until they finally closed. Faith was already gone, peaceful in the way of someone who decided the world was safe enough to rest in. 3 small bodies. Warm. Federal breathing. Mariana typed faster. She thought about Derek, somewhere across the city, not yet knowing that his mother had walked into a lawyer's office and handed over a piece of paper with check, if survived, written on it in his own handwriting. Not yet knowing that the woman he'd left to freeze had 3 years of documentation, a $900 million inheritance, a lawyer whose sister had died in a situation exactly like this one, and a foundation already being built on the bones of everything he'd tried to bury. He thought the hard part was over. He thought wrong. Forgiveness is a choice. Consequences are math. And she'd always been better at math than him. The news broke on a Thursday. Mariana didn't know how. Catherine's team was investigating. A leak somewhere. A clerk at the DA's office. Someone who'd recognized the name Ashford and understood what it meant. By 9 a.m. the story was on 3 local news sites. By noon it was national. Billionaire heiress files criminal charges against husband who left her to freeze. The headline made her sound like a headline. Not a person. A headline. By 2 p.m., the counter-narrative had started. Derek had given a statement through his attorney. Carefully worded. Devastatingly effective. Mr. Shaw is deeply saddened by his estranged wife's decision to weaponize a painful separation for financial gain. He arranged for Ms. Reyes's care before their separation and is committed to the well-being of his children. He looks forward to addressing these baseless allegations in court. He arranged for her care. Mariana read it 4 times. Each time the words rearranged themselves into something that sounded almost believable, the way skilled lies always did. If you didn't know about the browser history, if you didn't know about the email filters, if you didn't know about check if survived written in his own handwriting, if you were just a person reading a headline, you might wonder. Victoria called at 3 p.m. He knows I went to the lawyers, she said. No preamble. No perfume arrival pause. Just the words, stripped of performance. What did he say? Nothing. A beat. That's how I know it's bad. Mariana set the phone down after the call ended. Looked at the window. The March sky had gone flat and gray. That particular gray that couldn't decide between winter and spring and chose neither. Her phone kept lighting up. Numbers she didn't recognize. 2 journalists. A producer from a morning show. A woman who identified herself as a victim advocate who wanted to share Mariana's story on her platform. Mariana turned the phone face down. That night, the babies wouldn't settle. All 3 had caught something. A mild cold, Dr. Reeves said when Mariana called at midnight. Completely normal for newborns, nothing dangerous. But their noses were blocked and their breathing was louder than usual, and every time Mariana got one settled, another would startle awake with a sound that wasn't quite crying, but wasn't peace either. She moved between cribs in the dark. Faith to Hope to Lily. Back to Faith. 3 a.m. She sat on the floor between the cribs with her back against the wall and her knees pulled up and let herself be still for the first time in days. The apartment was warm. She kept noticing that. The way the heat came through the vents without effort, without negotiation, without someone deciding on a Thursday morning that she didn't deserve it anymore. It was just warm. Reliably, ordinarily warm. She pressed her cold hands against her knees. Thought about Derek's statement. Arranged for her care. Thought about check if survived. Thought about the day they'd brought the babies home. All 3 of them. The hospital discharge paperwork taking 2 hours because of the insurance complications Derek kept insisting weren't complicated. She'd sat in a wheelchair holding all three because the hospital only had one wheelchair and Derek had gone to get the car and hadn't come back for 40 minutes. She'd sat there in that hallway counting ceiling tiles. She hadn't understood then that he was already calculating. The worst part, the part she hadn't let herself look at directly until now, at 3 a.m. on the floor between three cribs, was that she'd loved him. Not the performance of loving him. Not the strategic management of loving him. Actually loved him. The man who'd looked her in the eye in that office 11 years ago and seen her. The man who'd danced with her in their first kitchen to no music. Who'd learned how her grandmother took her coffee and ordered it that way at every diner they ever went to together. That man had been real. Or real enough. Or she'd been young enough and hungry enough to be seen that the difference hadn't mattered. She wondered now if he'd calculated that too. If the eye contact and the coffee order had been the opening moves of something she'd only understood at the end. Some people come into your life to show you what you don't want. She'd read that somewhere once. It hadn't meant anything then. Lily made a sound. Not a cry. More of a declaration. Present. Demanding acknowledgement. Mariana reached up without standing and put her hand through the crib slat. Lily's fingers wrapped around her index finger immediately. The fighter, still insisting on contact even in her sleep. Mariana held on. I want to stop here for a second. Not because the story is over, it's not. But because if you're watching this at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. on your phone in the dark, and something in this story is sitting too close to your own life, I see you. Subscribe if this channel is the kind of place you want to come back to. The kind of place that doesn't look away. We're almost through the dark. Stay. The foundation application hit its first wall on Friday morning. The provisional status Catherine had promised in 5 days had been accurate for straightforward cases. The Elena Ashford Foundation was not a straightforward case. Because Mariana's name was now attached to a criminal case that was attached to a billion-dollar estate that was attached to a public narrative that 3 separate journalists were writing 3 separate versions of, the IRS's nonprofit division had flagged the application for additional review. Additional review meant 6 to 8 weeks. Mariana sat across from Catherine and said nothing for a long moment. 6 to 8 weeks, she said. I know. Women are counting to 3 right now. I know, Mariana. In apartments with no heat. With babies who've stopped crying because they don't have the energy left to cry. Catherine set down her pen. I know. What can we do? We can distribute through my firm's charitable umbrella immediately. It's not the foundation. It's not in Elena's name. But it's functional. It's now. Mariana looked at the window. The city. The flat gray sky that still couldn't decide. She thought about what she was building and why, and whether rage was a strong enough foundation for something meant to outlast it. She thought about her mother, Elena, who'd worked 3 jobs and died at 34 and whispered warnings to a 15-year-old who wouldn't understand them for another 20 years. She thought about what Elena would have built if she'd had the chance. If William Ashford had looked at his biracial daughter and chosen love over pride. If the money had come to Elena instead of arriving a generation late, delivered by guilt, 30 years too slow, what would Elena have made of all this? She'd have made something that lasted, Mariana thought. She'd have made it fast, and she'd have made it sturdy, and she wouldn't have waited for the paperwork to clear. Fine, Mariana said. We distribute through the firm's umbrella. Starting Monday. I'll set it up today. Mariana stood, pulled on her coat, paused at the door. Catherine, the legal fees. For the criminal case. The divorce. The foundation. All of it. We'll discuss. I'm not asking about payment plans. Mariana turned. I'm asking if you have enough staff. Because this is going to move fast, and I need to know you can keep up. Catherine looked at her for a moment. Then she picked up her phone. Started dialing. I'm calling in 3 more attorneys, she said. And clearing my calendar through June. Back at the apartment, Clara was managing a minor crisis. Hope had sneezed directly into Lily's face, and Lily had responded with the full force of her considerable personality. Both babies were crying. Faith was watching the chaos with an expression of profound philosophical resignation. Mariana walked in, took Lily without breaking stride, pressed her cold hand against the baby's warm cheek. Lily stopped crying, looked at her mother, looked at her cold hand, grabbed it with both of hers. Mariana stood in her warm kitchen, holding a baby who was holding her cold hand, and felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope. Something quieter than hope. The particular stillness of a woman who has survived the worst thing and is still standing and has just realized, not for the first time, but for the first time with her whole body, that the worst thing is behind her. Ahead was only the building, and she knew how to build. Later, after the babies were down and Clara had gone and the apartment was quiet, Mariana sat at the kitchen table and opened her phone. Victoria had texted, "Derek is meeting with his attorney tomorrow morning. He's going to push back on everything. He's going to make it ugly." Mariana stared at the message. Typed back, "Let him." Set the phone face down. Opened her laptop. Pulled up the foundation document. Added one more line at the bottom. "We are not built for survival. We are built for what comes after." Saved it. Closed the laptop. Pressed her hands flat against the table. Cold. Always cold. But getting there. Father Doyle came to the apartment on a Tuesday. He called first. That was his way. Always announcing himself. Never assuming welcome. And arrived exactly when he said he would, carrying a paper bag that smelled like the bakery 2 blocks from St. Augustine's and his coat pockets full of lemon drops. Clara let him in. He stood in the entryway and looked around the warm apartment, at the 3 cribs visible through the nursery door, at the foundation documents spread across the kitchen table, at Mariana standing in the middle of it all with cold hands, and a look on her face he recognized. "You're ready," he said, not a question. Mariana studied him. "For what?" He reached into his coat. Not the lemon drop pocket, the other one. The interior pocket, the one close to his chest. He produced an envelope, not cream-colored like the inheritance letters. Older. The paper had gone soft at the edges with age, the seal long since opened and resealed with a strip of tape that had yellowed. Her name was on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize. Mariana. When the time is right. Her hands were cold when she took it. She sat at the kitchen table. Father Doyle sat across from her. Didn't speak. Didn't look away. Just present. The way he'd been present on the church steps. The way he'd been present in the hospital. The specific presence of someone who understood that some moments required witness, not words. Mariana opened the envelope. The letter was 4 pages. Her mother's handwriting. She knew it from the birthday cards Elena had written in advance and left with a neighbor before she died. 15 cards. One for every birthday until Mariana turned 30. She'd opened the last one 6 years ago and sat with it for a week before she could put it down. This handwriting was the same, but younger, angrier, more alive. My Mariana. If Father Doyle has given you this, then something has broken you down to the bottom. I'm sorry for that. And I'm not sorry, because the bottom is where I found out what I was made of, and I think you're made of the same thing. Your grandfather is going to leave you money. I know this because his lawyer contacted me last year. Yes, he has lawyers trying to find me now that he's dying, now that it's almost too late to matter. I told the lawyer I didn't want his money. I told him to tell William that his guilt was his to carry, not mine to absolve. But I've been thinking about you. His guilt doesn't belong to you either. But his money is different. His money is 30 years of what he owed me. What he owed us. What he stole by choosing his pride over his daughter. If he leaves it to you, take it. Take every dollar and build something he never could have imagined. Something that has nothing to do with his guilt and everything to do with what we survived. There are things I need to tell you about our family. About what William's mother left behind before him. About why the money matters less than what you do with it. But I can't put all of that in a letter. What I can tell you is this. The women in our family have always been the ones who counted. Counted to 3, counted pennies, counted days until things got better. We counted because nobody else was going to count for us. And the counting worked. Not because it changed anything outside us, but because it kept us present. It kept us here. That you're still here. I know you are because Father Doyle is very good at knowing when I love you past every distance. Build something that lasts. Your mother, Elena P.S. Never let a man control your money. I know you know this. I'm saying it anyway. Mariana set the letter down. The apartment was very quiet. Hope had fallen asleep in the nursery. Mariana could see her through the open door, one small fist raised beside her cheek, the observer finally at rest. Lily was in Clara's arms in the corner, suspicious of the stranger in the room, but too drowsy to fully protest. Faith was in her crib, both sisters' heartbeats close enough to feel warm. Federal breathing. Father Doyle waited. She knew, Mariana said. She knew he'd leave me money. She suspected. She was preparing you for the possibility. She said the women in our family have always been the ones who counted. Yes. Mariana looked at the letter, at her mother's handwriting. At never let a man control your money written in a postscript like an afterthought, that was actually the whole point. She thought about Elena working 3 jobs. About William Ashford dying saying his daughter's name. About 30 years of what he owed compressed into a number with 9 zeros that had arrived too late to save the woman it was meant for, and just in time to save the woman she'd left behind. Build something that lasts. The foundation, Mariana said. Yes. She would have, her voice caught. She let it. She would have loved that it's in her name. Father Doyle reached into his lemon drop pocket, set one on the table in front of her. She picked it up. Let the sour sweet dissolve on her tongue. Sugar helps with shock. Sugar helps with hope. Both things at once. She folded the letter carefully. Set it back in the envelope. Set the envelope on top of the foundation documents. Then she opened her laptop, pulled up the legal filing Catherine had prepared, the divorce settlement response, the minimal support request, the complete financial disclosure with every debt attached like an anchor to everything Derek thought he was winning. The trap, fully assembled. Waiting for his signature, she read through it once. Twice. Every mortgage. Every debt. Every dollar he'd gambled. Every lie he'd told in his own handwriting and in browser histories and in email filters named Archive with a password that said exactly what he thought of her. She picked up her phone. Called Catherine. We're ready, she said. You're sure? Mariana looked at Elena's letter on top of the foundation documents. At Hope's small fist through the nursery door. At the lemon drop wrapper on the table. She built this for me 23 years ago, Mariana said. I'm not making her wait any longer. A pause. Filing in the morning, Catherine said. He'll be served by noon. Mariana set the phone down. Outside, March had made its decision. Spring was arriving. Not gently, not gracefully, but with the specific insistence of something that had been delayed too long and was done waiting. She looked at her hands, cold. Still cold, but getting there. You've come this far. Through the blizzard and the browser history and the handwriting that said check if survived and a mother's letter that said build something that lasts. If this story has reached something in you that needed reaching, subscribe. Not for the numbers. For the woman who might find this at 2 a.m. and need to know that the counting works. The climax is next. Stay. Derek was served at 11:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. Catherine's paralegal, a young woman named Tess, who had the specific calm of someone who'd done this enough times to stop being surprised by people's faces, delivered the papers to Derek's office building. She texted Catherine one word afterward. Received. Mariana was feeding hope when the text came through. She read it. Set the phone down. Kept feeding hope. The trap was closed. Now they waited. Derek's attorney called Catherine at 2 p.m. My client wants to settle, the attorney said. He's reviewed the disclosure and he's prepared to sign. Catherine's pen stopped moving. He's reviewed the full disclosure. Every page. He's satisfied with the asset division. Catherine looked at Mariana across the conference table. Something moved in her expression. Not quite a smile. Something more precise than that. We'll arrange signing for Friday, Catherine said. 10 a.m. She hung up. The room was quiet for a moment. He thinks he's winning, Mariana said. He thinks he's getting the house, the business, and a clean exit from a desperate woman who didn't know what she had. Catherine set her pen down with a soft, deliberate click. He reviewed every page of the disclosure and didn't notice that every asset comes with its liability attached. The $850,000 house with the $1.1 million mortgage. The business he's gutted with $500,000 in debt. Every credit card. Every gambling loss. Every dollar. Mariana pressed her hands flat against the table. Cold. Always cold. Friday, she said. Thursday night, Derek called. Not his attorney. Derek himself. From a number she didn't recognize. He'd probably borrowed someone's phone. Knowing she'd blocked his, she answered. Mariana. His voice was the same. That was the thing that hit her. Not the wrongness of it, but the sameness. The voice that had said her name in that office 11 years ago and made her feel seen. The voice that had said, "You'll figure it out. Women like you always do," and walked out the door. The same voice. Derek. A pause. I think we should talk. Before tomorrow. Just us. We're talking now. Not like this. In person. I think if we just... He paused. The calculated pause she now recognized as performance. I think we could work this out without the lawyers. Like adults. Like adults. She thought about check if survived in his handwriting. I found your note, she said. Silence. The one in your desk. November 18th through March 1st. Exit during storm. Optimal conditions. Check if survived. The silence stretched 0.4 heartbeats. 5. 6. Mariana. I'll see you at 10 a.m., Derek. She paused. Bring a pen. She hung up, pressed her hands flat against the kitchen table, counted 1, 2, 3. Not to survive, not even to believe, just to mark the moment, to be fully present in it, to feel the specific weight of 11 years arriving at a single point and know she was still standing. Friday morning. Mariana arrived at Catherine's office at 9:45. She stopped in the lobby, reached into her coat pocket, took out the lemon drop Father Doyle had given her on Tuesday. She'd carried it since, smooth and hard against her fingers. She put it on her tongue. Sour sweet. Sugar helps with shock. Sugar helps with hope. She rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. Derek was already in the conference room when she arrived. He'd dressed carefully. The dark suit, the good watch, the specific presentation of a man who wanted to project stability. His attorney sat beside him, a tall man named Briggs who specialized in high-conflict divorce and had the careful eyes of someone paid to anticipate damage. Victoria sat in the corner. Mariana hadn't known she'd be here. She stopped in the doorway. Victoria met her eyes, gave one small nod. Her perfume, Mariana noticed, was lighter today, almost absent, as if she'd put on less deliberately or forgotten, or decided that arriving before herself was a habit that belonged to a version of her she was setting down. Mariana sat across from Derek. He looked at her. She looked at him. For 11 years she'd been watching his face and reading it, the micro-expressions, the tells, the moments when the calculations surfaced behind the charm. She read it now that he was scared. Good. Let's begin, Catherine said. Briggs walked Derek through the settlement documents, page by page. His voice was professional, efficient, a man billing by the hour who wanted this clean. Derek signed. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. The asset division. The debt assumption. The full financial disclosure. His pen moved easily, confidently. The signature of a man who believed he was getting away with something. Page 7. The liability attachment schedule. Derek's pen slowed. His eyes moved down the column of numbers. Mariana watched his face as he read. Watched the moment the calculation failed. The moment the numbers stopped adding up the way he'd expected and started adding up the way she'd always known they would. He looked up. What is this? That's the complete liability schedule, Catherine said pleasantly. Attached to the assets you've agreed to assume. Standard disclosure requirement. These debts are yours. You assumed them with the assets. Page 3, paragraph 4. Your attorney reviewed it. Briggs was very still. Derek looked at his attorney. Something moved between them. The specific silence of a man realizing his counsel had missed something critical. The mortgage on the house, Derek said. His voice had changed. The performance was gone. It says $1.1 million. Yes. The house is worth $850,000. Current market value, yes. Derek set the pen down. Mariana watched him understand. The house. Underwater by $250,000. The business buried in $500,000 of debt he'd hidden across 4 years of creative accounting. The credit cards. The gambling losses. The cryptocurrency. Everything he'd borrowed against a future he'd planned to fund with her inheritance. Total debt assumed. $2.3 million. Total assets received. $1.6 million. Net position. -$700,000. and collection agencies who now had his name and his new address, and a legal document confirming his assumption of liability. You knew. Derek said that he was looking at her. Not at Catherine. At Mariana. You knew this whole time. 3 years, she said. Every mortgage. Every debt. Every browser search. The room was completely still. The babies, his voice cracked on it. The first real sound she'd heard from him in years. Mariana, the babies are warm, she said. Federal breathing. No thanks to your weather research. His face went white. The DA has your handwriting, she said quietly. The timeline. November 18th through March 1st. The hypothermia research. The storm forecast. Optimal conditions. She paused. They also have your browser history. Your email filters. A folder called Archive with a password that tells me exactly what you thought you were doing. Briggs put his hand on Derek's arm. Derek shook it off. I didn't. I wouldn't have actually. Check if survived, Mariana said. In your handwriting. On paper you kept in your desk. The silence was absolute. Then Victoria spoke from the corner. The first words she'd said since Mariana arrived. Derek. Her voice was stripped of everything it had ever used as armor. Just sound. Just a mother saying her son's name in a room where she'd handed over the evidence that would define what he was. Stop. Derek looked at his mother. Something moved across his face. Something young and broken and too late that he picked up the pen, signed the remaining pages. Some apologies are just permission slips for the next time. Some signatures are just the last move in a game someone else has been playing longer. She didn't destroy him out of hatred. She destroyed him out of precision. There's a difference. One burns you down with them. The other leaves you standing in the ashes, warm. Afterward, Catherine walked Mariana to the elevator. The DA is moving forward, Catherine said. Reckless endangerment. Mail fraud. The handwriting, the browser history, your medical records from the hospital. It's substantial. Good. He'll fight it. He'll lose. Mariana pressed the elevator button. He spent 3 months planning how to walk away from us. I spent 3 years planning how to make sure he couldn't. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in, turned. The foundation goes live Monday, she said. I want you there. Catherine looked at her for a moment. I'll bring lemon drops, she said. The doors closed. Mariana stood alone in the elevator as it descended. 42 floors of city sliding past the small window. The same city she'd watched through tinted windows 6 weeks ago, smaller and more manageable than it used to be. She pressed her hands flat against the elevator wall, cold, almost warm. The Elena Ashford Foundation opened on a Monday. Not quietly, not tentatively, not the way things open when they're afraid of themselves. It opened the way spring had arrived that year, insistent, overdue, done waiting. 6 months later, Mariana stood at the window of her office. Not the 42nd floor. Lower. Closer to the street. Closer to the city at ground level. The level where women walked 6 blocks through blizzards and counted to 3 in dark apartments and needed someone to have built something for exactly this moment. The foundation had served 847 women in 6 months. Emergency housing. Legal representation. Medical care. Financial literacy. Child care, so mothers could work and heal and rebuild without having to choose between their children and their survival. 847 women who'd called the number on the website at 2 a.m. and found someone who answered. Father Doyle had been at the launch. He'd stood in the back of the room with his coat pockets full of lemon drops and his eyes full of something that looked like Elena, or what Elena might have become if William Ashford had chosen love over pride 30 years earlier. Catherine had brought a bowl of lemon drops and set it on the reception desk. For whoever needs it, she'd said. Sugar helps with shock. The desk attendant, a woman named Pearl who'd come through the Foundation's own intake program 4 months earlier and now ran the front desk with a precision that made Catherine's eyes go sharp with appreciation, had added a small card beside the bowl. And hope. Derek had pleaded guilty in September. Reckless endangerment. Mail fraud. 18 months, minimum security. His attorney had argued for less. The medical records from the hospital, Mariana's malnourishment, the baby's weights, the doctor's note about another 48 hours, had argued back harder. He'd looked at Mariana across the courtroom when the sentence was read. She'd looked back, not with anger, not with triumph, with something quieter and more final than either, the specific expression of a woman who had finished a piece of work and set it down. Victoria had not attended the sentencing. She'd sent a handwritten note to Catherine's office instead. Tell Mariana I'll be at the foundation benefit in December. I'll bring a check. It won't be enough. It's a start. Mariana had read the note twice, folded it, put it in the drawer with Elena's letter. Two women who'd spent decades being shaped by men who decided their lives were negotiable. Both of them learning, in the end, to negotiate for themselves. In the nursery at home, her home, bought in her name, warm in every room. Lily, Hope, and Faith were 1 year old. Lily had taken her first steps 3 weeks ago and treated walking as a personal affront to anyone not keeping up. Hope watched everything, the room, the people, the spaces between words, with those ancient eyes that missed nothing. Faith had started laughing, a sound so sudden and complete that it stopped whatever room she was in and made every person in it laugh too. 3 biracial daughters who were warm and fed and held. 3 small lives that had survived because their mother counted. That evening, Mariana stood at the window of the foundation office as the city turned gold with late light. She thought about Elena, about William, about the 30 years of guilt compressed into a number with 9 zeros, about the letter in the interior pocket of an old priest's coat, kept close to his chest for 23 years, waiting for exactly the right breaking point, about the counting, all the counting. She lifted her hands, pressed them together, warm. For the first time since the night she'd knocked on a church door with no sound left in her hands. Her hands were warm. She stood with that for a moment. Then she picked up her phone, opened the foundation intake system. A new application had come in at 2 a.m. A woman, 3 children, no heat. Mariana began to read. If you made it here, to this moment, to these warm hands, to this woman still answering at 2 a.m., thank you. Not everyone stays for the whole journey. You did. Here's what I want to ask you. Has someone ever underestimated you so completely that it became the thing that saved you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. 6 months ago, I started telling stories like this one. Stories about women who count to 3 in the dark and build empires from what was meant to bury them. My grandmother said stories like these don't find audiences. She said people want easy. She was wrong, and you're the proof. If this channel is the kind of place you come back to, subscribe. Not just for the next story, for the woman who finds it at 3 a.m. and needs to know the counting works. You could be the reason she stays. One more thing, where did you watch this from? Drop your city below. These stories travel further than I ever expected. I want to know how far. Until the next one, take care of your hands.